looking at the 10th entry in the iconic Friday the 13th slasher series, with the entry that many fans consider the ultimate jump the shark entry, Jason X from 2001.
What the hell is that?
Wow.
It's fucking crazy to think that people that were born the year this movie came out are now legally old enough to drink. After Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, arguably the second worst entry in the franchise, ended with a cliffhanger meant to set up the long-awaited Freddy vs. Jason. The ultimate crossover, unfortunately, spent about a decade in development hell. In that time, Wes Craven had made the 7th Nightmare on Elm Street film, New Nightmare. And after an 8-year gap, New Line Cinema decided it was probably for the best to make another Friday the 13th film, just to keep audiences interested. And for those wondering why this is the ultimate jump the shark film, Todd Farmer, in his screenwriting debut, came up with the idea of Jason Voorhees going into outer space.
Really? Why?
I guess he figured, hey, if it worked for Pinhead and the Leprechaun, why not Jason?
Sure. Why not?
Many found the idea insane, including Kane Hodder, who returned once again to play Jason.
And they said, it's going to be Jason in space. I said, yeah, what is it really? Jason in space. I know, that was funny the first time, but what is it really? Jason in space. Really? I was hesitant about it.
But he still signed on, not wanting to be replaced. When I was a kid in my middle to high school years, I thought the idea looked dumb, and I saw the low rating it had, so I didn't go in with high expectations, and after finally watching it a few years ago, my thoughts are, it is ridiculous. It is, at times, straight up retarded, and it is clear they had no other fresh ideas, and I goddamn love this movie.
Operator, I got a nut down here that just said... No, it's not paramedics. I think... You all right?
Kind of like Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason X was a surprisingly fun film and definitely falls into the guilty pleasure category of slasher sequels. And after the awfulness of Jason Goes to Hell, it was just a nice breath of fresh air, and I'll get into why very soon. And just in case anyone's wondering why the film is called Jason X, as mentioned in my last review, while New Line Cinema now own the rights of the character of Jason Voorhees, they did not own the rights to the title of Friday the 13th, so they had to get creative, which led to Jason X because Roman numerals.
10. X marks the spot.
With a script by the newcomer Todd Farmer, who would later go on to write My Bloody Valentine 3D, Drive Angry, and The Messengers. Directing duties going to the late Jim Isaac, who had been a special effectsman for Return of the Jedi, Gremlins, and Acrophobia, and many more. And producing duties going to Noel J. Cunningham, the son of series creator Sean S. Cunningham, who was still on board as an executive producer. Jason X was made in the year 2000, and after a couple of years of behind-the-scenes issues, finally got its release in 2001, internationally, and then its US release in 2002. And now we got the behind-the-scenes pre-production shit out of the way. Let's jump into the plot. After Jason Goes to Hell ended with Jason literally being dragged into hell, Jason X opens with him back on Earth with new clothes, a new hockey mask, and a lot more skin than he had the last time we saw him. Clearly there were some adventures we missed. Opening in the year 2010, which probably seemed a ways away from 2001, Jason is chained up under the watch of scientist Rowan LaFontaine, played by Lexa Doig, at the Crystal Lake Research Facility. I guess the camp finally closed. After being unable to kill Jason, Rowan suggests putting him in cryogenic stasis, as was common in 2010.
You ever heard of anything like this before?
Oh, sure, Earl. Everybody knows about them. We just didn't tell you.
Unfortunately, for the sake of us having a movie, the government/army arrives to take Jason away to study and find out the secret to him being indestructible despite the danger. The lead scientist of this incredibly dumb group is played by none other than legendary horror sci-fi director David Cronenberg.
His ability to regenerate lost and damaged tissue, he cries out for more research.
Cronenberg's cameo was done as a favor to director Jim Isaac, who had previously worked on the effects for The Fly, Naked Lunch, and Existence. And also, apparently Cronenberg was really enthusiastic about the idea of getting killed in a slasher film. I guess this is before he decided he was too good for the common horror folk.
He takes himself so seriously these days. He's an artist now.
After the group of overconfident soldiers are wiped out, Rowan is able to lure Jason to a cryogenic chamber and freeze him, but not before he pierces the pod and stabs her, leading to both of them getting frozen.
Cryogenic breach. Emergency lockdown.
445 years go by. I guess nobody noticed the dead soldiers or bothered to check for her in that time.
Bunch of assholes.
In the year 2455, we see Earth is now too polluted to sustain life, and a group of college kids from the new planet Earth 2.
Where did they come up with this stuff?
A group of college kids visit the cryogen facility on an expedition led by their wormy professor, Brandon Lowe, played by Jonathan Potts, who, as many have pointed out, was the voice of Link on the Legend of Zelda cartoon from 1989.
I did not know that.
Just a funny thing to know. After a snafu in which a dumb kid named Azrael, played by Dov Treferbach, gets his arm chopped off by Jason's machete, the group brings Rowan and Jason up to their spaceship, known as the Grendel.
What kind of stupid name is that?
In this future, nanobots are used to help regrow dead tissue, so Dreadlocks gets to keep his arm, and Rowan is thawed out with her gut resealed. After discovering the infamousy of Jason Voorhees, Professor Lowe becomes obsessed with preserving Jason so he can sell him and settle some old debts.
That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of.
Some things may change over time, but greed and stupidity ain't on that list. Jason appears to be lying dormant, allowing himself to be poked and ripped up by the medical examiner. After not having an unmasking scene, Jason goes to hell. We get a pretty grisly one here. Not the traditional unmasking technique, but I'll take it.
Come down and eat chicken with me, beautiful. It's so dark.
The student bodies and Professor Lowe in a very fucked up sex scene all decide now is the time to get down.
Yeah! Come on!
You pass!
I can still see it. I can't believe that just happened.
With horny young folk and a creepy old man getting busy, Jason jerks back to life. Apparently his sex senses were tingling. And this is one part of the film that I really like. This movie is pretty aware in just how over the top this plot is, and at times it kind of becomes self-parody, and while that can go bad in many horror movies, I think it works here, and it's pretty fun the way they poke at some of the cliches that Friday the 13th is best known for.
Shit, I got company here, people!
Jason kills the examiner in a pretty creative death scene. Rowan tries to warn Lowe of how dangerous Jason is. Even when faced with his students' deaths, he's only concerned about getting rich.
If I knew what I knew in the past, I would have...
A team of Space Marines, cause you gotta have fucking Space Marines, called the Grunts, search the ship for Jason. They're led by Sergeant Brodsky, played by Peter Mensa, probably the coolest character in the film. One by one, the Grunts are hacked off. The sequence is actually suspenseful while still being funny with creative deaths and goofy one-liners.
He's screwed.
The film's writer, Todd Farmer, has a small role as the first Grunt to get killed during a hologram VR game that he's playing with Dreadlocks. The CGI is just as bad as what's supposed to be real that, for a second, you can't really tell it's a game.
Okay, screw this, game over!
Then he dies for real with a very underwhelming neck snap. Brodsky is the last Grunt fighting, and while tough as nails, he fares just about as well as the others.
It's gonna take more than a put down this old dog. Oh, that ought to do it.
I got nothing. That's just fucking hilarious. Brodsky appears to be out of the movie for a little while. Lowe, still looking out for his own interests, tells the group that they will get help when they reach the space station Solaris. Just as they arrive, Jason kills the pilot, causing the Grendel to crash and ultimately destroy the space station. According to Todd Farmer, there were probably somewhere between 19,000 and 20,000 people on the Solaris when it blew up. Meaning, despite the lack of throat slashing, Jason X technically has the highest body count of the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yes. Fascinating.
Jason breaks into the lab, causing the group to flee, except Professor Lowe, who actually tries to sweet-talk his way out of getting killed.
You know, I know people, you know, I have connections. We can make a fortune.
I don't think there's a character you've ever been more excited to see die before than this motherfucker. Jason reclaims his trademark machete, leading to probably the most quoted line in the film.
Guys, it's okay, he just wanted his machete back.
We sadly don't see Lowe's actual death.
Lame.
The remaining survivors decide their best chance is to leave in the shuttle from earlier. Rowan leads a few of the students, having no issue working a futuristic machine gun.
No problem, piece of cake.
While walking through the cargo bay, she comes across Brodsky, who's still alive. Tough dude. They take him up to get healed by the nanobots. After Jason guts another member of the crew, Kinsa, played by Melody Johnson, panics and in one of the most cowardly moves you will ever see, tries to abandon the group and escape in the shuttle by herself, but the sniveling little bitch forgets that the ship is still attached to the fueling rods, causing the shuttle to explode. I feel so bad for that shuttle. Cornered by Jason with no way out, the group's android team member, KM-14, played by Lisa Ryder, comes in to fight him off, but not before getting an interesting upgrade from her creator/lover.
Afraid I'm gonna have to hurt you now.
Anytime you're ready, mistress. We then get a pretty fun battle that ends with KM actually appearing to kill Jason.
Yeah.
Why didn't more people try that? Oh, and fun fact, at the time Jason X came out, Lexa Doig and Lisa Ryder were starring on the sci-fi TV show Andromeda, except on that show, Doig played an android and Ryder played a human.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
The group sends out a distress signal, which is reached, but unfortunately the ship won't reach them in time before the Grendel loses the power to keep them alive. To better their chances, they decide to use charges to separate the damaged parts of the ship. Brodsky appears to have healed up. Unfortunately, the nanobots in the lab become drawn to Jason's butchered body. They rebuild the already indestructible slasher, turning him into, as the film calls him, Uber Jason!
He's been modified.
He looks like he was designed by a middle schooler who went fucking nuts in art class, but regardless, he does kind of look cool. KM tries to take him on again, but the upgrade is a little too much for her.
I swear, I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached.
Teammate Waylander, played by Derwin Jordan, sacrifices himself to separate the ship. You know, the more I think about it, a dwindling group of survivors using charges to separate a damaged spaceship, a crewman sacrificing himself to save his teammates, that's the ending to Event Horizon. You know, it's It's one thing to rip off Alien, but it's another thing to rip off a rip-off.
And this is the best that you can come up with? That's what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
The last few survivors think they're in the clear, but do explosions in the vacuum of space deter our favorite unstoppable zombie killer?
Of course not. Don't be ridiculous.
Holy shit! We gotta go!
Janessa, the token bitch of the film, played by Melissa Aid, dies by getting sucked into space, and while a pretty unlikable character, she does get a great final line.
Oh, this sucks on so many levels!
I get it, it's a great one.
The rescue ship arrives, but connecting to the Grendel proves difficult. With Jason approaching fast, Brodsky goes outside to solve the problem. Tucson, played by Chuck Campbell, who, upon my rewatch of the film, I noticed bears a pretty strong resemblance to Andrew Garfield, to the point that it's kind of fucking scary. Am I alone in this, or do any of you see it too?
No, sir.
Tucson plugs in KM's head and creates a hologram simulation of Camp Crystal Lake. This scene is probably the funniest part of the film. Very self-aware satire.
You want a beer? Or we can have premarital sex. We love premarital sex!
We even get a much better version of the sleeping bag kill from Part 7, The New Blood.
Oh, that's gonna hurt.
Do it again! I wasn't looking!
Rowan, Tucson, and KM are able to get on board the rescue ship before the Grendel explodes.
You've gotta be kidding me.
Jason almost comes at them, but Brodsky grabs him, sacrificing himself as the two burn up in the atmosphere on their way down to Earth 2. And this may be just me, but on the way going down, try and tell me it doesn't look like Brodsky's fucking Jason in the ass. The survivors look down on Earth 2, thinking it looks beautiful. Jason and Brodsky are mistaken for a falling star as they crash. Jason's uber mass sinks to the bottom of a new lake, and chronologically, that's where the original franchise ends.
Great! Now what are we gonna do?
Now, before I go into my wraparound thoughts, I just want to give my quick opinions on all the main actors who I feel really stood out in this movie. Lexa Doig is a pretty good actress to get behind, especially in this role. Rowan LaFontaine was a decent protagonist. She's a lot smarter than most slasher survivors, is actually familiar with Jason, and knows what she's doing. She even gets a few badass moments. I love the scene where she threatens Kinza for being a blubbering wimp. Jonathan Potts is just eating up the screen as Professor Lowe. Yes, the character is a wormy little shit, but he's an entertaining shit. You're just tapping your fingers in anticipation, waiting for him to fucking die.
It's okay, he just wanted his machete back! Whew!
Lisa Ryder is very likable as the android KM-14. She's the right levels of socially awkward, funny, and sexy.
Gotcha.
Her fight scenes are fun, and you can tell she's loving every second of it. She also has nice chemistry with Chuck Campbell as Tucson. I was really happy that they made it all the way to the end alive. Peter Mensah really stands out as Brodsky, a total badass who gets a few genuinely funny moments, and while the fall to Earth looks a little silly, his sacrifice did mean something.
What a beautiful way to die, as a falling star. Yes, you're right.
Kane Hodder really shines in his fourth and final portrayal as Jason Voorhees. The intimidation, the body movement, has never looked better. Even when he becomes Uber Jason, he still instills a lot of dread. In this film, he gets some of the coolest kills during his entire run as the hockey mask wearing killer. As I said earlier, this film definitely falls into the guilty pleasure category, and the fact that it's self-aware of just how ridiculous this plot is, and they don't try to take it seriously for a minute, is what makes it work for me. The film goes by fast, and you're never bored when watching it. Even though it's undeniably part comedy, Jason X does have some actually suspenseful moments, which is owed to the actors' likable performances, Jim Isaac's direction, and the well-done cinematography by Derek V. Underschultz. Harry Manfredini's score is a little hit and miss, but it fits the goofier tone the movie's going for. The CGI is pretty lousy, but if you can take the space battles in the 90s Star Trek show seriously, you should have no problem getting into it. The effects are credited to a group called Toy Box, which sounds like a fucking sex shop. Speaking of which, while there's not a ton of nudity in this compared to the other movies, there's still enough panty shots, shirtless men, and tits to keep you satisfied. The gore is pretty good, although you can tell they started using digital effects for some shots, and it's just not the same as the practical days. The movie was a critical and financial failure when it came out, but did extremely well on home video, and the reception has become a bit more positive as time has gone on, becoming a cult classic.
Let's face it, it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Do I recommend Jason X? Hell yeah. It's a fun 90-minute ride, and you don't even have to see the other Friday the 13th to understand or get into it. If you love goofy sci-fi comedy, it can make for an enjoyable movie night. And as for the next film in the franchise, Freddy vs. Jason, I'm looking forward to talking about that one, but just to be clear, I'm not sure when I'm going to review it, and I'm honestly not sure if I'll do it on the next Friday the 13th, just because I haven't caught up as much with the Nightmare on Elm Street series. It'd be a little weird talking about it without having talked about those, so until then, I hope you enjoyed this review. Stay tuned for the next one coming up, and when I figure out when I want to talk about Freddy vs. Jason, I will let you know.
You're willing to risk the deaths of innocent civilians if he escapes.
Yes.